everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 620, recording today live on the 20th of May, 2020, in the lockdown era, I suppose we could call it, where we're all managing to keep ourselves together, where our shared love of music and music technology and the synthesizers and all of those things that keep us occupied, I hope. And I hope you will be able to join us for the next hour or so, where we will be talking of many such things. We are hoping to have a third guest, but so far he's not shown up, so we don't know. I hope it's all right, and he's got network and stuff. So we'll go over and we'll say hello to Mr. Dominic Hawken, who's over there in, I don't know where he is, somewhere in the UK, in a studio.
Darkest West Sussex.
West Sussex. Oh, is that where the Storks are?
Yes.
Now, this. We're not a twitching show, even though we're streaming on Twitch. Two pairs of storks have started to have nested in the UK, and it's the first time for 600 years.
Well, I don't know.
They're up an oak tree somewhere in Sussex. Somewhere.
Okay. Well, I don't get out at the best of times, especially now. But I will. I'll keep an ear open. No one's mentioned it, but
everybody was very excited on the news.
A couple of neighbours. Oh, that's super. Really exciting.
It is. Isn't it?
Give me something
so
to.
We're heading back towards kind of. Well, what was that? That would have been King Henry VIII. About 1400 was the last time. So we're heading back to the sort of like Middle Ages. You know,
with the dolphins swimming up the Thames and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, that stuff and otters, and maybe we'll have bears and. Wolves back in the UK by the end of the lockdown. Who knows?
There's a wood just up from where we live called Bearwood, so that would be great.
That's where they'll be. That's where they'll be. Well, lovely to have you, Dom. And we have Robbie Bronnimann. Look, there he is. He arrived. Hello. He made it. How are you, Robbie? You okay?
You had to run up to the front gate for a courier who.
He was on the bog. He was on the bog.
Okay.
No. Yeah. So anyway, I'm here.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. So I'm just making sure we've got all our... Well, Robbie, of course, lovely to hear you. I didn't introduce Dominic. Dominic, of course, Mr. Wiggly on YouTube, and also Snuggle Sounds, app developer, producer, songwriter, all of those things. I do beg your pardon.
A lot of hats. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
And then there's a man with a hat on. I don't know if he's got a lot of hats. If I know Robbie, I suspect he might have a lot of hats. He's got a lot of pairs of glasses.
Well, I shaved off all my hair to start again because when I found out I got no gigs till next year, I thought no one's going to have to see me in public for a long time. So because I had that kind of half and half hairstyle, it was like all off to start again or just keep going with it. So I thought no time like the present.
Lockdown. There's got to be. I'm so sorry. There's a title there. Lockdown topiary. Lockdown topiary. Topiary.
They call the haircut.
My daughter said I look like a Cadbury cream egg, which I wasn't the greatest compliment.
It's the chips and curry look, isn't it? 50-50. The chips and curry. That's what the haircut is. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'll come to you in a sec, Gaz. Robbie Bronnimann there in Bristol, also in Bristol. UK producer, MD for Howard Jones. Guess not doing much live gigs, but I don't know whether there's anything streaming coming up, but you're working on albums, soundtracks, all that kind of stuff. You good?
Working on my own EP at the moment.
Hold on. Yeah. How long have you been working on this EP for? Is it like...
No, this is a different project. This is a project for BT's label, so it's a different thing.
Okay. Excellent. Well, glad to hear it. Excellent. And that other voice you heard there was Mr. Gaz Williams, who's also in Bristol, but a different part. Gaz Williams there. Yes. Are you joining us on your streaming setup, or are you joining us on the webcam today?
Yes. No, I'm on a streaming setup, so I can do something very weird like this. Whoa.
Oh, right. That's what everybody else sees. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that all? Don't get it.
Yeah.
Don't get it.
Yeah.
Bass player, music technologist, all of those things. How are you doing, Gaz? You well?
Yes, I'm doing very good. Thank you very much. I'm getting ready for my show this evening. So,
you've got a new show to plug.
Yes, it's called The Gaz Williams Show. That's a very creative title. And and I'm planning on going live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. So it's a little bit like an after show, like a little after show to the Sonic show as well. So it's where we can all hang out and drink.
When an hour's live streaming isn't enough for you. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'd like to mention, you see, in today's show, it's going to be a continuation of my first forays into Eurorack. So I have actually already plugged this. That is, I've got the Moog Subharmonicon, which is going into the Eurorack. And I've been dying to try it out in that way, but I've been good, and I'm going to do that exclusively live for the very first time. So that's one of the things. That's one thing to look forward to in the show. Another is I've got an amazing special guest who's going to be joining and giving us a little music performance. We're going to have live music. I've also got some videos of some cool artists to play as well. So it's going to be a little bit more of an entertainment show, really, I suppose.
As opposed to this one, which is
serious.
I'm only messing with you. Yeah, head over. So that's on your YouTube channel, is it right, Gaz?
On my Gaz Williams YouTube channel, yeah, and it's going to be going live.
What's it called?
8 p.m. tonight.
The Gaz Williams Show.
Gaz Williams Show.
There we go. I always like that. Gaz Waldo. I don't know why.
Gaz Waldo.
Gaz Waldo.
Good,
yeah, something like that. Anyway, well, lovely to have everybody here. And nice to see all our friends in the good grief, in the YouTube chat room and in the IRC chat. Just wanted to update everybody because I know there's been a whole lot of messing around with the audio version of the podcast. We got flooded with dodgy requests. We had 2 million downloads via Amazon last month, which was just insane, and it cost us a fortune, but we managed to get some refunds off Amazon, which is awesome. And I've also moved it over to a third-party hosting provider who don't charge for bandwidth. Hooray! So hopefully this feed should all be sorted out, but I know some of you might have been experiencing it trying to re-download a load of episodes because things changed, and we may change yet again, but I'll try and prevent any of that. So normal podcast should be resumed for your MP3 needs. So just wanted to put that out there for everybody who was maybe cursing us for eating up all of their mobile bandwidth while it downloaded 600 episodes all over again. Sorry. So, what should we start with? Well, let's start with, the big news of last week. We missed it because it came out after the show was on, was this
Hello
one.
And welcome to Sonic Lab. I'm Gaz Williams, and today we are looking at the new Akai MPC Live II, or the Right Honourable MP Clive II, as I prefer to call it.
That's all I need to play, really. That's all you need to know. Yes, MPC Live II, Akai MPC Live II. Once you've heard that, you can't unsee it. Every time you look at it, you just think it's the Right Honourable MP Clive II. Yeah, or well, even the first one would now just be the Right Honourable MP Clive. If you don't know what that means, in the UK, a member of Parliament is called an MP. So you would call somebody the Right Honourable MP for, what constituency is the MP is MP Clive II representing? Essex,
I reckon. Yeah.
So he's pretty close to you there, Dom. He could be looking. He could be your
He's probably looking at those
Parliament.
stalks right now, I would imagine.
Yeah, conservation. He's a keen conservationist, but also really, really interested in new technology at the same time. We could riff on this for hours, couldn't we? But MPC, whenever there's some new Akai hardware out, particularly the its MPC brand, it's a massive thing. And Gaz very boldly and thank you very much for taking that on, because I could never have got around to it. Took it on. Your headline takeaway from it, but people should watch the review, obviously, and they have been in them thousands. But
the big thing with it is the fact it's got built-in speakers. And this is such a big talking point, really, because typically you don't associate built-in speakers with, high quality professional devices. If you discount the ARP 2600 and the VCS3, I was thinking about things which had built-in speakers. Of course, the venerable DJX from
HS60.
So, Juno HS60. That was the Juno. That was the Juno, wasn't it, with speakers? Yeah. Yeah. So, one thing that has to be said about the MPC speakers, though, is that they do sound better than you would expect for built-in speakers. They call them monitor speakers, and they do sound kind of like monitor speakers. And I think what I say in the review, and it's definitely something I'll stand by, is that they certainly sound good enough. They're good enough to work with. And the thing about having it straight in front of you is the immediacy of it, the sound emanating from where it starts. There's something actually quite appealing about it. And it does run on batteries as well. So, you do have this kind of mobile thing. But again, I'm just quoting my review here. It doesn't have any microphone inputs, or it doesn't have kind of guitar level inputs or anything. So that's a bit of a shame, because it stops it being that one
stop. Yeah.
Yeah, you need.
But I mean, I guess the main thing is with that is, obviously MPC workflow is an MPC workflow, and I think, as you alluded to, there's no real sort of global arrange mode where you can quickly move stuff around. It's all sort of pattern based and pattern change, so you have to be kind of into that, I guess.
Yeah, and that's certainly my that was my biggest criticism of the whole thing, which is really more to do with the MPC platform. I know lots of people do like it and use it, but I think this is the thing. They did say to me, though, that I think your pattern lengths can be anything up to, I think maybe even 999 bars long. So you can build entire arrangements into single patterns. But I'm kind of thinking navigating, so there's ways around it. And, quite often creative ways around things lead to interesting results. So, so I'm not adverse to that. But I think, it definitely feels a little bit long in the tooth as a way of working.
Pattern-based stuff, yeah.
The pattern-based stuff. But also, I think other pattern-based things have changed, in terms of, like Electron, different tracks having different pattern lengths and things like that, whereas MPC, everything is in what they call sequences in MPC terminology. Is you set the sequence, and it could be 128 tracks of MIDI, and on the hardware on this one 8 tracks of audio, and then that will be however many bars long that sort of sequence is. So, the idea
so you could set an entire... It's the sort of thing that might... I mean, this is the thing that always interested me about the live, was it wasn't necessarily so much as maybe a composition tool, but as a kind of, okay, I've done all my work, I'm now going to bounce it and I'm going to turn it into something that I can take out live, and it's all there. It's not a laptop. It's got everything on SSD or SD card, and it'll run the show. I don't need to arrange on the fly. I just need... it to play out this song for me to be able to play my keys and trigger and all of those kind of things. So
absolutely. And I mean, very valid point. And, I think it's just for me, I'm always looking, I'm like a songwriter in a way, and I'm looking to build songs, I think. So when I'm looking at these hardware devices, I'm always curious to see if it's, if it enhances the songwriting process or if it is difficult to work the way I kind of want to work. So as of yet,
I suppose.
I was just going to say one thing. 2.8. This is 2.8, and who knows what's going to be in Akai? In MPC 3.0. There could be changes to that. There's certainly room. I
know they've been talking about streaming from disk for samples, but that's just not coming. Dom, you're a pat. You've gone deluge, but presumably, did you go MPC first? I mean, have you been through the MPC?
Yeah, no, I've got a massive soft spot for Akai. Because way back in the day when I was about 18, 19, a guy called Dave Caulfield, who ran Akai UK, kind of took me under his wing, and they sponsored me. And I'd gone out and I'd got a bank loan, and I'd bought an S1000 at the time to go off and do session musicians and kind of launch my musical career. And somehow I got in touch with Dave somehow. Anyway, so I'm there sitting at Akai, and I ended up going out and doing product demos for them. And I ended up with a rack of one of everything, literally. So at the time, that would be S1100, 1000, 950, 900, MPC 60, just sitting around whilst I would do this kind of product demos and work with them. And I wrote some software for them, which is what got me into software production, to power the Akai SO1, if you remember that. It was really cheap thing, but everyone wanted to look like the Pet Shop Boys with a screen, with a waveform on it. So that's how I got into software writing. So I owe Dave a lot. And my company then, at the time, wrote some software called Mezza, which was the PC, at least the PC version, that allowed you to squirt samples backwards and forwards between PCs and really kind of a little bit before its time, I guess. Now it's just sort of second nature. And then when it kind of got taken over a little bit, and the UK side of Akai became more of a distribution channel, really, rather than having huge clout. And I kind of lost touch. Dave's retired now. And I feel a little bit let down, I guess, in a way, by Akai seeing what's coming out, because it always seems to me a little bit unfinished. If I had my way, I think the guys at Akai should just buy Synthstrom, join together, take the Deluge UE and amazing kind of use, just the amazing product that it is, wrap it into Akai and off you go, and then make those guys millionaires, and they've got the product of a lifetime going on there. But with the MPC, was it the X, the last sort of big launch, it just struck me as a little bit rushed and unfinished, and then they seem to take quite a long time to get those software updates up to date, because I mean the MPC 60, well, classic machine, that workflow still works. You know, just the idea of being able to put one finger on a pad and then it repeats the hi-hat, and you can then just adjust the level of velocity of the hi-hat. I mean, that was a game changer. That made the influence on hip hop and rap that came out with just that one function was incredible. And there's no need to change that. There is a need, I think, to bring it up, just as Gaz said, so that, you know, if you want a song mode, there is
60. You're going 64 pads, yeah.
Well, it's not broken. It just always strikes me as being just a little bit unfinished, and I hope that, you know, they push it through. I do think that the part of this is probably down to the fact I think they were trying to centralize all their codes, so they were using the same code base across all the MPCs, and whenever you do something like that, it's always a disaster, to be honest. And if you can pull that off, that's amazing. And the upside of that is brilliant, but it's true for any company just with websites.
Well, I mean, Bitwig, Bitwig parity across, Linux, Mac, and PC, Windows, etc. Hello, Robbie. Are you have been? Have you? I put it to you, sir. Are you or have you ever been an MPC person?
I've never used one of those things in my life, because the first sequencer I got was D20, and then I moved on to an Atari ST with what was it at the time before, Notator, and then onto and then Logic. So I've just the idea of those things for me is never. Any time I've tried to dip my toe in the water with Machine or something like that just sort of pattern based, all in one paradigm for me just never works. It never works for me, because I want to get under the bonnet far too quickly with things. So I've probably owned 2 drum machines in my whole career, and I've had about, God knows, hundreds of synths. So that tells you everything.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I think that there's the thing is, it's the non-linear way of working or the linear way of working, isn't it? It's that's the thing.
One or the other. I mean, mostly one or the other. I mean, I know some people do a bit of both, but I mean, it's just I have tried to dip toe in it, and I just think, oh God, I can't do this. I just need to be able to move this here. I need to move that there. I've got to put this on that, and it just doesn't work for me. So I've never even looked at one of these products. So I'm not, the only Akai product I ever owned was an S6000, and when I first got signed, I went on my first big tour, and the day of the tour started, it for some inexplicable reason, I went to back up my Jazz drive, or whatever it was. I had the big one, what was that 1 gig one? Was it Jazz or is it Jitsi?
Jazz, yeah.
Jazz, yeah. And it was an really early firmware of the software, and I just sold 2 Roland S700, 770s to get this Akai, and I really was upset, because basically it was the worst move I ever made, because I went to back up the samples and it put bits of one sample into other samples. They were all mashed up, so there was like a bit of a kick drum in the middle of a vocal, in the middle of a bass. And
that would have been my software then.
And I had one more Jazz disc, and I went, oh shit, I better back it up, and I did that, and it did it to the second one as well.
Oh no!
So the night before going on tour. So that's my fond memories of.
I can understand why you might be slightly burned by that experience. That's not the sort of thing that you would. But I mean, but essentially, the MPC Live II gives it takes the MPC Live, which was smaller, it makes it a bit bigger, adds speakers, and adds the CV and gate, and keeps the batteries. So, if portability was the thing you wanted, there are 3 distinct areas that you can be in now: Live 2, Live, and the X. There was something else, wasn't there?
Yeah, and the one. You got the one.
And the one. And the one.
Force. And the Force as well.
And that's true. And the Force.
It's a 64 pad sort of workflow.
I know. The one feels like the sweet spot to me. I mean, it doesn't have the battery pad, but it's got the CV and gate, and it's still quite small. And
I was going to say one last thing though, just because the 2.8 update came out maybe like a week or so before the announcement of the Live 2. that is a really significant update for.
Yeah, that MIDI hosting is astonishing, isn't it?
MIDI hosting is really, really good. But the thing that kind of got me as well, though, is that some things that came out in that version, my goodness, before that was, because I haven't used it for a long time, I was really frustrated with a bunch of things. One thing, being able to just select track by just, Machina users will know that. You hold select and you hit pad 2, and then you've selected track 2. That wasn't in it until 2.8, and now you can do it. You hold the main button and hit a pad, and then you jump to the track select. And so I was kind of curious, why would something that's so obvious take such a long time to be implemented? Version 2.8. I would have thought that would be there from version 1. So I was just kind of curious. Maybe it's because of, as like Dom has mentioned, just how difficult it is.
I don't know. They've got a good team. I mean, Pete Goodliff is a smart cookie. But I mean, if they are unifying the code, then that's going to take a lot of time. Yeah. But once you're there, then it should be golden, shouldn't it? But
so I was just going to say, though, the workflow. If you're someone who's maybe dabbled a while ago and haven't for a while, there's a huge bunch of new workflow enhancements, and also something which just seemed ludicrously spiteful before. You can put it into this notes mode where you can have it like you can on some other devices like Machina as well. You can have it play in scales, and you can play chords off the pads. But prior to 2.8, if you wanted to change any parameters in a different mode, like for instance, there's these very decent built-in soft synths, you would switch, you'd go to the soft synth editor, and the pads would revert to the kind of just the standard, and it would.
Well, it's good job they fixed it. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, you just kind of think, ugh. Yeah. So. So I was the reason I was mentioning that was just in case anybody had those earlier experiences with it. It may be worth looking again, because significant workflow increases in the 2.8, and that's for the entire range.
Does anyone know? Can you get the MPC 2.8 plugin and try that before you get the hardware, so you get your head around the way it works? Is that a viable route?
Oh.
Because that's
a very good point.
That would make sense.
Machina, you can't with Machina. It's only hardware. I think you might be able to. Well, because it works with all of the just like controllers, doesn't it? And it's various different controllers that they've released over the years. I'm guessing.
I don't know. That may be a way to get around it. Anyway, I think what we'll do now is we'll just have a little word from our friends over at iZotope. If you stay tuned, you'll be able to figure out if you either have won a copy of Ozone 9 Advanced or if you are going to win one. Stick around.
Building on a 17-year legacy in audio mastering, Ozone 9 brings balance to your mix with never-before-seen processing for low end, real-time instrument separation, and lightning-fast workflows powered by machine learning. Expect lower CPU usage and shorter startup times with Ozone 9 compared to Ozone 8. Experience fluid metering in a fully resizable environment that lets you track the most subtle details of your audio. Use more plugins at once, mix while you master without worrying about slowdowns or dropouts. And immerse yourself in a smooth, modern experience designed to keep you in your creative flow. As you can see, Ozone 9 is the fastest way to get your master off the ground. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out our other videos and head to iZotope.com to learn more about mixing and mastering, and to download your free trial of Ozone 9.
Indeed, and we thank them very much for their continued provision of prizes. If you haven't won a copy of Ozone 9 Advanced, then it's well worth entering. We have a competition for you. What we're looking for is a Twitter competition, and I have prepared a tweet hashtag this week. I'll be pleased to know. We're looking for the hashtag LockdownMaster and the hashtag Ozone 9 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. Looking for the hashtag LockdownMaster, one word, and the hashtag Ozone 9, which is the number 9, to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. And that's on Twitter. And we thank them very much for their provision of the prize. And we've also got a competition winner from last week. And the winner is someone called Cruz Beat Bazaar, or Cruz Beat Bazaar, @Cruz Beat Bazaar. Lots of Z's in there. And they tweeted the requisite hashtags and whatnot, and the supercomputer picked them. So congratulations. If you want to get in touch, you'll get your copy of Ozone 9 Advanced. Yes, indeed you will. All right. Now, There were a couple of other topics here which were more sort of just general. As many of us, in lockdown, we're kind of finding new stuff out. I know Gaz, for instance, is spending a lot of time figuring out how to get sort of live streaming and multi-camera switching so he could do content from his place. Dom, I'm sure, has things that he's working on. I've been doing various things, and Robbie, I'm sure you have. And so I had this kind of question, which was what was the last technical revelation that really helped you out? Because quite often when you have time to kind of, think, actually, I never really bothered to learn this, and you just go, boom, there's a light bulb moment, and I wondered, if anybody had one of those recently. Robbie, I know you've been through quite a lot of changes this week. Obviously
I moved the computer finally moved it to Mojave, whoever it is, just so I could have Logic. I definitely wasn't going to go to Catalina because I wanted to still keep my power core going, trusty power core for one plugin, and it's all flawless. I've managed to upgrade the whole system. Every single bit of software I'm running flawlessly in Logic. Even all the things that people are having problems with from Native Instruments, everything's working fine for me. So I know a lot of people had problems. I think it was people who just went, oh, shit, I got to upgrade, and just upgraded straight to Catalina without thinking about maybe making the jump to the to the next best thing.
Mojave is the current OS -1, isn't it, that Apple will support?
Yeah, that's what that's generally always been my stance, but then obviously Catalina came out, and I was like, I was just waiting for a good point in the proceedings at the end of projects where I'd made stem packs for everything, just to know that I could, I wasn't going to get caught out by a client. So I did that, but that's been great. But I've been having a real revelation in totally revising the way I produce a mix, very much with some sort of input from BT with regards to the way you mixing stuff to various sets of stems and doing stem mastering for your finished songs as opposed to stuff on the main output. So I've been kind of relearning my whole kind of last 20 years of stuff. So yeah, it's been good. It's been really interesting process.
Elaborate. So what you would do, you'd kind of get the arrangement how you want it, get the individual parts how you want them sound wise, and then bounce them down and
yeah, I mean it's all about I've got 12 subgroups, and it's all about doing lots of sculpting on the subgroups for things as groups, as opposed to then putting anything on the master bus at all. And so therefore you could then provide up to 12 stems to your mastering engineer for end product, and it just seems to be to my mix already. I've been working on 2 tracks on my thing, and they're just like the night and day, the sound of everything, and also moving everything to audio as quickly as possible, because what I've been shocked about is when you bounce everything to audio, even stuff you'd just consider would just be sample accurate when on the grid after you've bounced in place, like samples or virtual instruments that are kind of very established. It's surprising how much stuff isn't actually properly really totally on the grid, even when you bounce in place, I guess because plugins introduce a bit of latency here and there. So it's just been a revelation, sort of just like learning to kind of work with audio from a very early stage, as opposed to leaving everything open in a session.
I suppose that makes sense, because I mean, when you've got lots of things living and breathing, the phase relationship between them all and the effects, it can get a bit mushy, I presume. Is that kind of
it's a revelation for me, because it's just a revelation in terms of sample accurately editing drums and bass lines and everything together as audio. And then the other revelation is, of course, is that you realise that once you've done that kind of process and consolidated everything down to 12, and then I pack everything into groups, so there's like 12 stems of your arrangement, that's all that's left in your arrangement, you can then start doing loads of interesting things to it, because you've got such broad stroke kind of like room for trying things out. Like before, you go, I want to put this plugin across this subgroup. It takes about an hour to get all the routing sorted out. You try it, you bounce it, you don't like it. Whereas when you start working with audio at that kind of really raw level, you can quickly try so many crazy things out. So, yeah, it's quite liberating.
Interesting. Yeah, I can understand why that might be the case.
You've got to be bold. You've got to be bold. You've got to say, I'm happy with what I've got, and you don't want to keep going backwards and rebouncing. But if you can if you can have that kind of confidence, I'm having great fun doing it.
Brilliant. Well, that's a pretty big change to workflow.
Fun.
Dom,
Yeah.
how about you? I mean, I guess you've had time, aside from, I saw that rather charming video of your daughter introduced to the looper for a school project. That was excellent. So I'm guessing I don't know if you got any tips from that, but
blown away with that. Yeah, go check out youtube.com Mr. Wiggly for that, but also for me rather than my daughter. But she's rapidly getting more views than I am, to be honest. That was just using the the Boss looper, the RC505 that originally I was going to lend to you, Nick, and
That's
then
right,
I said, I'm sorry, I can't lend it to you because my daughter's really getting into it. She's 8. And then there was a school project on the rainforest, and we just had some percussion, chicken shakers and stuff like that. And she just said, right, record me. And it was great, really, really good. So I was blown away by that. But a couple of things, just touching on what Robbie just said. Yeah, I did that quite a long time ago. Go to audio. My thing is, don't get hung up. It's not so much go to audio because the timing changes. I quite like the timing changing, but I want it to consistently change. So I want to capture on audio the thing that grooves right, the thing that works right. And also what committing to audio does, especially if you've got an external synth or a software synth or something, what I'll tend to do now, which has been a game changer, is run that synth through something external, whether it's a preamp or a bit of modular kit or a speaker and a mic or whatever, and alter stuff as it's being recorded. So everything begins to change. And this is mainly with the kind of techno stuff that I've been doing. I mainly do either dub reggae or techno, which is a nice mix. But my aim for just before lockdown was to go out and do some live techno sets, mainly on modular, and obviously that hasn't happened because of lockdown. But I did a virtual one recently at a thing called Clownfest, which went really, really well. So big up Clownfest, by the way. If you want to look on Facebook for Clownfest, there's another one coming up in July. So like 20-minute sets. It's a really good format. So rather than having loads of people on for ages, I had a lot of people doing 20-minute sets each, which kept it really interesting. But I found my game changer, which is kind of relative to this, was the Expert Sleepers module. I've got an ES8, but they make quite a few different ones. And it's basically a sound card interface to your modular. So it turns up as a standard sound card, but because modular stuff is at a higher voltage, the signal comes out much hotter and needs to go in a lot hotter. It's very hard to get things out of the computer into modular, and this ES8 is just brilliant. So what it meant I could do was I could take a vocal or any synth, internal, external, whatever, and use my modular kit as effects rack effectively. And I was banging on about this Schweiman QMMF4 last time I was on, which is basically a really nice filter with a distortion preampy switch on it. It's not even a dial, and putting stuff out through that, even if you take something like Serum or Omnisphere or Diva or any synth, that's there, kick drums, putting through that gives it another life and takes it out of the box, and then you're back into audio again and you're done. And that has been a total game changer for me. Before, I used to have to kind of just get some cables and try and map to levels, and it was, to be honest, too much hassle, so I didn't bother. Now just routing things out of the computer through something. I'm going to do a YouTube
Do you
video.
aggregate it? I mean, are you using aggregating devices for that? So,
as in what, mixing it down together and
well, no, I mean, so the ES8 becomes one of a couple of audio. You've got the audio interface that you're monitoring through, and then when you're sending
yeah. So on the Mac, you make an aggregate interface, so it just becomes an extra set of outputs. So I just have my main speakers coming out from the main A to D, and this is just another set of inputs there. And by aggregate, I thought you meant kind of combine the original signal with this, and I do that a bit, but I think I care less about minuscule timing differences and keeping everything in MIDI until the last minute in case I want to move a kick drum, and things are sounding so much better. And so that whole thing about like looking at other people who are making dance music and stuff, saying that a lot of their time is spent making things change over time. They won't just have a kick drum going. They won't just put a hi-hat in there. They'll have a hi-hat with a filter just moving, so everything just moves together. That's the game changer for me. And this ES8 as a bit of kit has made that possible, really. And funnily enough, not caring, my tip for tip for 2020 is don't get so hung up on making everything perfect. Put it down and wipe it if you don't like it. Just don't spend hours working on your kick drum. Do one and do something else.
There is that, isn't there? How much time does it take just to stop and do it again rather than try and fix something that's broken the first time?
Do it and live with it. Do it and live with it for a couple of minutes.
Well, Gaz, so technical revelation then, the last thing that you just went, oh my goodness.
So many. Yeah, I will say, just to carry on from what Dom was saying, and actually analog summing, the review that I've been doing of the Silver Bullet has definitely been very eye-opening in terms of analog summing, because, to take something out of the digital domain, put it through a set of converters and then reconvert it back in is something that I'd studiously avoided. I'm not even sure when I made that decision, but I was of the kind of mindset that an AD and a DA only happens once. It happens on the way in from your microphones or whatever in to the digital domain, and it remains in there until it's played off a CD or off an MP3 or whatever it is. Only then does it come out of the digital domain. So I pretty much have worked absolutely inside of that for years and years and years. I know Rich Hilton is a big fan of analog summing, but having this device here for this review, sadly it's got to go. So it has really changed my opinion about taking stuff out. Now, of course, it's a pain to do that, because it means you have to print everything in real time, I guess, and just it just adds a lot of time into the process, and it's do I have to take photos of the knob settings, that if it was just, can you just take a tiny bit off that, and then I want to reprint it again in, like we used to have to do in the bad old days, in real time. So that sort of is the counter to it. But the effect of analog summing is really quite striking. And I mean, even if you're just doing it with just a stereo, just sending a stereo mix out and back in again, and the effect of the stereo image, that's the thing I think that's blown me away the most. And I've made my own conclusion about why that is, which I think it's this, that when you're in the box or whatever, and you put something and you say put it in the center, then that signal, identical versions of it exist in the left and right speakers. Then when it goes out through the analog, it goes out through an analog process, and then the very, 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 and I mean, we're talking extremely subtle variations that happen when it returns in, that, say, vocal or whatever it was that's pan center, the identical bits of it in both sides is not quite identical anymore.
And yes, okay. So
that changed. And then, that across everything that was the same on both sides are ever so slightly different. I mean, this is my conclusion. I mean, I'm not entirely sure why it is, but it just seems to be deeper and more 3D and just like a much richer soundstage. And I've been thinking this, I mean, apart from it blowing my mind just how profound that difference is, just thinking that must be something to do with the reason. I mean, maybe someone could enlighten me as to what it is, but certainly from a mastering point of view, so I've been trying to mimic the Silver Bullet using the analog heat, which you can kind of get close to. It's not exactly the same. It starts to go off in a slightly different direction, but the advantage of using the analog heat is you can do it with Overbridge, and with Overbridge 2.0 seems a lot more stable and useful. So I think that's the thing. Analog summing, that's certainly. The other thing that's been blowing me away is OBS, but that's for a different podcast.
Yes, well, it certainly is. But we are gonna. I think we're going to start doing a couple of things on live streaming setups and whatnot. Reviews of equipment. So, just in, I got an email from Tats from Germany, Korg Germany. Mm-hmm. They've just announced something called the Pyjama Cookbook, which is a guide to solitary self-feeding, which is to do with food and all sorts of things. If you go to Korg-Germany.de, you can get that and download for free. It's a PDF. In fact, I'll have a look at that, see what it looks like. Self-guided fair by Korg. So it's a small team claiming to get Korg Germany off the ground. It's basically recipes from loads of people. Then we've got Mark Verber's Carnitas Tacos, or you can have Dave Smith's Margarita, inevitably. That's excellent. That looks quite good, actually. So, it's just like a sort of a load of people about nice things to eat. What a great idea, taking that out there. So if you want to check that out, that's at korg-germany.de. In fact, if I paste that in the chat room, then it will actually show up in the show notes in the right place. There we go. Why not? That works excellently. Okay, so that was an interesting idea. So let's think about this. What would we have next? Did anyone see the the MIDI Designer 2 update? Which I don't know if anybody of you have ever used this, but this was a game changer for me.
Hi, I'm Dan Rosenstark from MIDI Designer, and in this video I'm going to show you our latest feature, which is showing and hiding panels from buttons. So the first feature is,
this is actually quite a dry video, but for those of you who don't know, me and Gaz reviewed MIDI Designer Pro ages ago in Sonic Touch videos, and it's a really brilliant, and we still use it. In fact, I've got an iPad 1 over there that is running the maximum it can is iOS 5.1.1, and the version that I have of MIDI Designer Pro runs that, and that runs the whole show. Not this show, but it runs the studio side of things, switching cameras and transitions, and putting things on the back screen, on the front screen, what have you. It runs all of that, and it's a really brilliant piece of software that allows you to create sort of custom buttons and MIDI. That's one thing I really wish I could update, but the problem is I've got the old Alesis IO dock, which has got the old 30-pin connector, so it just stays there connected and in the system, connects via Wi-Fi or USB and works. This is 1.5 coming up quite soon. But again, this is this sort of controllerist thing. It's this kind of notion of creating this custom control environment so that you can have everything as you want it. It can evolve and take time. And we've been using, recently we've been trying with the Elgato Stream Deck and, all of those things. I don't know if anybody, I'm guessing, Dom, you might be familiar with the MIDI Designer Pro because it's a great piece of software.
I'm a couple of versions out, actually. I'm so into that kind of control, to be honest, and I love the idea of macro controls, a bit like you can set up in Ableton really easily, where a knob doesn't just turn a filter, it'll push the resonance or push the bass up to cater for the lack of resonance bass when the resonance goes up, that kind of stuff. And this is perfect. It's just perfect use of stuff like an iPad to do that. I haven't tried the new Logic that you discussed yesterday iPad interface. That sounds good. Omnisphere has a really good iPad style control surface, but this is brilliant because effectively you can just make whatever you want, and MIDI isn't that hard to get your head around with the way to program that stuff. Certainly if you want to do something simple, this is probably the best thing that you could use to do it with. And if you want to do something complex, then equally so. My only thing I'm missing now, and the only reason that I haven't used it so much recently, is I'm trying to recreate the feel of a desk when you're twisting effect sends on the fly. So I really want to grab a knob and turn it and send some echo, and then turn another knob and turn up the feedback to the echo. And I can't find any desk control or front-end desk style hardware that has effect sends in. I can find loads of things with faders on and stuff, but nothing which has a rack of effect sends on the top. So I'm going to go back and use this to do it, and then maybe try and set something else up to control it later when it comes out. But what I'm really missing from being in the box is just that idea of being able to grab 3 or 4 effect sends and just turn them on the fly and record them. And with this you can do that, which is great. My only thing is I kind of want a tactile knob sometimes. Well, the
MIDifier thing is that I think somebody was talking about. No, Robbie, because you've got a lot of hardware stuff. I mean, you're very much in the box, and I know you've streamlined down your setup. I mean, are you finding that you're creating these kind of custom controls for your system?
Yeah, I mean, Stream Deck, I've got pages and pages of stuff on that. I mean, I'm just creating stuff all the time for that. I've got I really want one of those Electra One MIDI controllers. Do you remember that? We showed it on the show a while ago. It's like a bespoke touch screen with 2 rows of knobs underneath. You might be interested in this, actually, Dom, for what you're talking about. But it looks like a fantastic way. You can create.
Oh yes, I do remember. Because you just missed it, didn't you?
I had one actually. Yeah,
this thing.
I had
Is that
one.
it?
Yeah, that's the one. And I had one on trial from them as well, and it's really, really good. Yeah. After the show, actually, a guy that over here had got 2 units from them to test, sent me one, and they're brilliant. And they've just gone back, I think, to tweak some design on there was a couple of things they needed to tweak before the full run, so I don't think it's out yet. And it is brilliant, actually, because touching any of those little controls would then fire up on the display. Yeah, this is what it does. And it was absolutely perfect. Yeah. Really well done.
That's the one you haven't got that you want.
That's what I would really like. I mean, you say I'm in the box. All the work I'm doing is pretty much everything's all analog, external stuff. So I've been printing off I've got the Wasp, the Cat, the Model D, and the Pro 1 all racked up. And
is that your Behringer rack, yeah?
Yeah, I've got like a little wall of Behringer and they're all going. Each one's got a Korg SQ1 connected to it, and then everything else is synced up. So I've got the Prophets, the OB6 and my modular, and the Hydra synth and the Quadrant and the Quantum, and I've been doing everything with that. So it's all been like printing all the time. Yeah,
interesting. Gaz. Oops. Oh, he's gone. I think you need to the 30-minute limit on your camera. Here he goes. He's back again.
God. I just have to press the remote button once, and do I remember? No. I've got to do that on my show later as well. Anyway, yes. Well, MIDI Designer, I mean, gosh, it must have been like close on 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago.
Was it that long? Crikey.
Or maybe 6 years ago, I'm not sure. But we did award it our illustrious Sonic Touch Gold Award, didn't we? To sort of to recognise that it was a really great piece of software. And you can use it as in between. You don't have to use the controls on the iPad screen. You could be using your bespoke controller and just use just use it as a sort of as a mapping kind of device as well. So it's incredibly deep, and it's. Well, when we looked at it, Nick, because I was doing a project, I think, which I needed a complex MIDI system for back in. Yeah, well, that was 2012, wasn't it? Yeah, 8 years ago. How about that? But I think it's an interesting piece of software in that it looks more or less the same. They've kept to certain paradigms that they've maintained, which I think is really good. Very clear to see what you're doing. So if you are using the touch display, you can have it so you can really customize exactly how you want it to behave. And I think it's really good. So I think it's for people who bought it like myself.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's. I think we've got it on the App Store. It's not cheap. I mean, it's 20. Oops, that's not what I was looking for. That's what I was looking for. It's $28.99, but it's definitely. Right. I would say it's worth getting hold of if you need some because it's and you can email stuff to yourself. It's just a really nicely thought out bit of kit.
It's really good for doing multiple program change messages if that's the sort of thing you want to do. So you can have different scenes where you hit a button and it will send multiple program change at the same time to different things, and then if you want to go down that route, I think it's probably about as best a way that I've ever used anyway. So sort of kudos to them keeping going, and this new update, it allows for you just to sort of touch the screen and make the controls sort of collapse, and there's a bit more.
That's going to be really interesting. Show and hide panel, so you can kind of hit a button and it'll just go boop. Here's the thing, and it's gone again, or hit another button and another panel will show up in it. It's just really so you can effectively you're getting into designing your own GUIs effectively, aren't you? So
absolutely. So strongly recommend if that's something you might be interested in. Of course, it can be controlling soft synths. So using it as without
you
any
can access hardware ports connected to the I/O. You can send RTP MIDI because of the iPad. You can send it over the network. You can send it over USB. I mean, there's all sorts of ways in and out of it. So yeah, very cool. Well worth going. MIDI Designer Pro. Check that out. We should actually. There's a new product, which is this.
It's a new dawn.
No, that's not it. Is it that? It's this. That's what I mean. That's what I was going to play. This is the new Pharlight from Native Instruments.
The human voice is unique in its ability to produce an almost unlimited range of timbres. Welcome to a walkthrough of Pharlight, our new granular vocal instrument. Pharlight is all about the human voice and what can be achieved with it when combined with a granular engine, real-time modulation and effects. Pharlight uses an advancement of the established Straylight concept, where 2 layers of granular and sample playback form a master snapshot that can be played tonally. While Straylight focuses primarily on the cinematic soundscape, Pharlight explores a wider range of styles.
I have to say, this demo sounds really good, and this is one thing that reiterated to me. I always forget this because whenever I load libraries into various things and you get contact libraries, whenever you listen to a Native Instrument drum library specifically, they just sound really good. They're like recording ready. They just there's something about the way that they do stuff. You just go, my God, that's fantastic. And you just don't. And I know there are other library manufacturers, but there's something about either the quality control or the engine they use or something. They just sound really good. And this is equally as much. This is very interesting. The other reason this came up is because Alla Alders, who is the Sonar Traffic guy, one of the Sonar Traffic guys from Holland. If you've been watching, he's been doing loads of live modular streams, and they're really good. He provided 44 patches for the Pharlight, but this thing it looks like a really, it's another one of those. I guess it's built, probably built in Reactor and given its own GUI and whatnot. Normally, so I think this is 179 reduced to 129, but it sounded really good. And it just reiterates this concept of how adaptable the human voice is as well. I got you on camera scoffing there, Robbie. What are you eating?
I'm eating spicy chili big hula hoops.
Oh, I thought it was going to be something really sort of healthy, and it's kind of like
small sushi.
No,
chilied dates. No.
Oh, I wish it was sushi. Oh, I miss sushi so much.
Oh gosh, yes, that's true. Me too. I love that sushi. Are you a Native Instruments kind of library and a consumer?
Oh my God. It would scare the pants off you to know how much money I've spent on contact libraries for scoring over the years. I'm a massive user, and complete whatever we're on now, 11, 12, 50. It's sort of like the incremental, like Saw movies, isn't it? It's like there seems to be a new one every 6 months. So I've been a big user right from the beginning. Reactor, big user of. The FM7 I used to use a lot. All of them, massive, all of it. But mostly nowadays more the sampling side of it, so the contact side of it, and complete control, because I've got the 49 and the 88 in the studio, which I use a lot. So
that integration. It does sound good though. I mean, I don't know what the I don't know.
I've got the other one. The other one's good.
What's it called? Straylight.
Straylight, that one. I'm a sucker for anything granular. I have been for years. So I mean, I consume anything granular. What does granular offer you that you're not finding elsewhere? Is it just a different perspective? I just love all the kind of weird time-based manipulation you can do of stuff, and extrapolating things out and making atmospheres out of it. I'm a bit overloaded here because I've got the Tasty Chips GR1 hardware granular sampler and the Quantum, but I still love Borderlands and all those kind of apps on the iPad I use regularly. So I just there's something about it. I just love it. I think it's because of the kind of music that I'm really into, the kind of the artists, electronic artists like Amin Tobin and BT and all those sort of people who are much more on the experimental sound design end of dance music and electronic music. It's always appealed to me, and granular just has that kind of ability just to go totally into the realms of far out. nonsense. So yeah.
Far out, Pharlight, even. There we go. There's but then it sounds like there's a nod to Fairlight, because especially with all those kind of ooey vocals there, Dom. I mean, there was just definitely a sort of a little nod.
Yeah, totally. Although completely not Fairlight related ultimately. No, but I mean, Contact is such a great platform. I agree with you with the sounds. I don't know. I mean, was it Yoad saying that he decided that different doors sounded differently? I mean, there is something going on in Contact in the way that it seems to process drums or process sounds in general.
Well, the battery sounds really good as well.
Yeah. The last one I got excited about up until this one, because I really liked the sound of this, was Noir. Do you remember the piano one we touched on here?
Was it Nils Fram?
Amazing. And straight after that, I bought that. It's just so usable, incredible sounding piano stuff. And this is the same. I think there's something about the human voice. I mean, we are designed to try and pull out human voices from all sounds, you know, from way back when we were listening for people shouting for help or something. And so sparsely using these kind of weirdly tuned or strange vocal noises when they still have an element of human to them, it really pops out the mix. I mean, unfortunately, to the point of being a little bit cliched now, maybe with they've been kind of all over pop for a while. On the demo for this, it does sound great, but I think it's a bit overused on those voices. But the pad sounds and stuff that are just always usable sound great. I mean, there's a few on Omnisphere that I use a lot, and this I think takes it to another dimension. So I'm really, really interested in it. I think it's really well put together, and I'm with Robbie. I think, you know, he said he's a massive user. Ho, good pun there with massive X and all that. But yeah, I've got Complete 12 or whatever, and I've also kind of ended up using mainly Contact stuff. The rest of it's is there and gets used, but actually if I kept a diary of all the soft synths I'd be using, Contact would be up there, and not so much of the other stuff, I think, now.
I wonder.
And you are right.
Sorry.
I was going to say, I was going to reiterate, Nick. I mean, the quality of content that they are kind of one of those companies. It's a bit like they're like, you know, the Apple of content, you know, in terms of it's consistently high, and the people that they choose to collaborate with on releases like the Nils Fram thing and things like that, you know, and the Guna Chord or all those kind of things, it's always right up there. So I always feel really confident buying their stuff, you know, that it's, you know,
I wonder if they have, interesting, I mean, they must, do you wonder if they've got a consistent sort of sample A&R person that everything's gone through, that kind of, it's
got to be. I mean, Spitfire, there's these sort of big companies who are managing these massive, really kind of, you know, epic projects. They've got to have like incredible procedures in place for you know, for quality control.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The only downside to all of this kind of massive sample library stuff is you've got to carry all of this stuff around with you, and that becomes the kind of the pain in the arse. You know, that's the thing that's sort of,
SSDs.
Yeah, well, exactly, those little ones, but they're not cheap, are they? But they are small, I suppose. No. But it's still terrifying.
I've got a little amazing little Thunderbolt 3 box, and it's got four terabyte SSDs in it. And it's about this big, the box, and I take it around with me when I'm touring. So I've got my whole sample library and a backup on my sample library and my whole audio drive and a backup on my audio drive always with me. And I just slot it in the studio. So I've effectively got all my samples all the time. But it's not cheap to do, but it's the only way of having access to everything all the time.
Yeah. Unless you're like Yoad and you just have a 100 megabit line and everything's on Dropbox and you just download it when you need it and share it that way, because here's an intro. There was another topic about that, but not on the tour. But yeah, I suppose not. I know, Gaz. Well, you mentioned this actually when we were talking yesterday, that the Pharlight had come out, and it does sound really nice, I have to say.
Yeah, you know, but
it's only actually 1.2 gigs as well.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a decently small footprint, really.
I mean, with software, I'm still playing catch up with things from years ago, like in the Native Instruments, like Rounds, and what was the little granular one that they did with a single sample in the middle, big.
I'm not sure.
It's incomplete anyway, but you know. So from a personal point of view, I mean, I'm just not that interested in not just this, but in software really these days, other than the recording and some processing. Actual instruments, I've really lost the interest in software since.
That's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I'm similar. I wonder why that is. I mean, I wonder what it is that why we've been lost. What is it that why is it that we're dropping away, or the fact that they haven't been compelling enough, or what do you think it is?
They're super compelling. I think, as I say, I think it's just that the ones like Omnisphere sort of killed it in a way just by being like almost unassailable, brilliant, incredible, and I just feel, and I've mentioned it before, and again, this is like a personal thing, and I don't really make commercial music. I make shitty music. That's what I make. So I'm interested in shitty sounds. So, some nice, glossy, lovely, professional stuff doesn't really interest me a lot, really. But I was kind of meaning, though, I'm being a bit facetious there, but I love like the stylophone, in the new one, and it's horrible, dirty, flawed self, and I just love it. And I've been doing stuff recently with my Abyss, and I love it. And I have a relationship.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's harder to have that unless you're working. Yeah,
it's always on the other side of the glass. It's always over there. It's someone else's work, and you just, and they try and flatter you with just a few controls that you feel like it's yours to give yourself some sense of ownership on it. But really, it's just playing with your ego, really. That's
Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a very. I think it's been a bit of a shift for me because, like, obviously we went through the whole thing of you can have synths now in a computer, and everyone gets rid of all their gear and they have all like these sort of early virtual synths and all that stuff. I'm a bit with Gaz in terms of I'm really not interested, apart from a few companies that I kind of really kind of follow because they're part of my kind of sonic cookbook, as it were, that I've always used. People like Arturia, I'm always always keep up to date with all those kind of people. I'm really not interested in buying endless virtual instruments that replicate analog synths, etc., because, like we've said, you can get so much more joy and fun and creativity with an analog synth in your hands doing it. What I do love is software that pushes the boundaries outside of what hardware does. So kind of very interesting instruments, hybrid processors that are totally outside the normal, very standard paradigm of what things should be. So, software still interests me on that kind of level. So, for instance, I just got that Oak Sound Soothe plugin. I don't know if you know that. Incredible plugin for it does like thousands of bands of like dynamic EQ at once, and it's like, that is only possible in software. It's not possible in a hardware unit. And those kind of tools interest me if they're going to help me, achieve something better in the studio sonically. But buying another analog compressor when I've already got about 100 of them doesn't interest me. So it's really tools that are kind of forward thinking for me, where software is exciting.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I suppose it's horses for courses, isn't it? And obviously, lots of people will say that software is generally more affordable, and that's true. I mean, this Far Side is $179, so, and it's obviously polyphonic, and it sounds great from what I can gather, and it just depends on what you need it for. And Dom, I imagine sometimes you need it because you got a deadline and you just need to be able to recall it.
I wish I did a decent pair of headphones. It didn't keep falling out my ear. I was just going to say everything's an oscillator, right? Just think of everything as an oscillator. My voice is an oscillator. Contact libraries are oscillators. Just mash them up. Take that source sound, whether it's something with a microphone, and do stuff to it. Turn it into your own. Yeah, if you've got I don't know, something in Ableton running, and you can just flip between different drum loops that you've downloaded, that's not really your thing, right? But if you mash them up, if you change them, if you put them through filters, if you echo them, if you reverse them, chop them up, put them in simpler, all that kind of stuff, that's your creativity. So everything is just a noise source for you to kind of sculpt into your own thing. Goes back to what I was saying with this modular stuff I've been working with. I'm just getting it out of the box, putting it through modular and sticking it back in. But you could literally take something, get a microphone, stick it in front of your speaker and record it back into your DAW, and it'll already sound different for your kick drum, I would have got a dustbin for my next YouTube video, where I was just going to put a speaker in the bottom of a dustbin and play stuff back and record that to get some air moving behind the sounds, But with lockdown, I'm not allowed to buy a dustbin, so I got a Christmas tree pot that I found in the garage that we used to have.
That's
what I'm saying is make your mark on the sounds you have. Don't be limited by using the sounds just because they happen to sound good.
Always an interesting idea. How about having a really long tube, like a big sort of drain tube about so big with a 12-inch speaker in it that you can move further and further away from the sound source on a little motor?
There's a 12-inch cab right behind me that my DJ mate gave me. I can't move the camera to show you. And literally just in this room, if you put a kick drum through it and you stick a mic in various corners or whatever, and just feed that back in with the original signal, suddenly, you don't need so much of these kind of valve-driven, super expensive preamps. They're great. I've got a couple here. There's a tube core and a rooster booster and all the rest of it. But suddenly, just making the air move a little bit and getting it on a mic. Mono,
Tinley's a big exponent of air moving, isn't he? I mean, that's what he says he misses from some software things, is you can't really get a sense of air moving. And I suppose that's actually a valid point if that's the sort of thing you're after, obviously. So. Right, I think we probably have reached the end of our discourse here, and been very enjoyable. Enjoyed it very much. Don't forget, Gaz, you've got to plug your show again, 8 o'clock on your Gaz Williams channel.
The Gaz Williams show. Shall I say who the guest is?
That's up to you.
Yeah, because I'm really pleased. Lisa Belladonna is going to be joining me, so she's going to be doing some performance. Amazing synthesist. Actually, amazing musician all around, really. So I'm quite pleased, and that hopefully is going to set a precedent of the standard of guests that I'm going to be having on my show. That will make up for the lack of quality coming from me, anyway. So that's
nonsense.
8 to 8 p.m. UK time. So what's that? I think it's roughly midday over on Pacific time, and sort of
3 hours from now is probably the best way. Mind you, only for the people watching live.
Yeah, well, we get some of that audience. We're happy, hopefully they'll get over there.
Yeah, and it's just a bit of fun, and and I'm just really, really, really intrigued to see. Oh God, I've been dying to do it. The Mini Brute 2 and the being able to mess with the sequencer and the sound of the Mini Brute 2 with the subharmonicon, and have it mounted there and patch in between. Oh, I've been having lots of ideas about, but I've resisted the temptation. So yes, that's. And I've also got my next Eurorack module as well, which I might announce at the end as well. Which will be the next episode.
Excellent. That's the tease. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, if you want to enter to win a copy of the iZotope's Ozone 9 Advanced, we're looking for the hashtag LockdownMaster, one word, and the hashtag Ozone 9 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. That's on Twitter. So do enter. Good chance you might win. Well, I mean, I say good chance. There are fortunately plenty of you who watch the show. And don't forget, I think we've got our audio podcast thing sorted out, so hopefully that'll be showing up. I think with Podbean at the moment, that may change. Who knows? But I want to say thank you very much to everybody for joining us. Dominic, thank you so much for joining us. Have you got any more live streams coming yourself on Mr. Rig?
Hopefully, yeah. There should be some more coming up. The last one I did was really successful, so I'm very chuffed by that. But if you don't know who Lisa Belladonna is, and if you do, you'll know to watch it. Definitely catch Gaz's stream tonight, because just amazing. You'll have it. You're in for a treat. That's a good coup. But yeah, thanks everyone. Check out my YouTube channel, please.
Excellent. And also Mr. Robbie Bronnimann, who I guess you'll be back to working on your EP. Are you pulling like long hours? Are you just sort of lost in it all, or are you just trying to be disciplined and get a routine going?
I'm one of these weird people. I do tend to revert to the nighttime hours, but I start again as this bizarre, because I'm on my own at home. I'm literally on my own at the moment. I got into this weird thing where, like, if I didn't watch it, I would just end up totally swapping. And before I knew it, I'd be like working all night and going to bed at 11 and then getting up, and then nobody can get hold of you because you're asleep when everybody else is awake. So I realised it's actually not very practical when you're trying to keep communication open with people for your mental health. So I've really tried not to work through the night.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Robbie. And as ever, lovely to have you on. And Mr. Gaz Williams, thank you for joining us as well. It's been a pleasure as ever. So I will now switch to our lovely four-way action. And now I've got to figure out how to shut the stream off in time for everybody. I'm going to... Sorry.
Good title.
Good title. I think the four-way action. Well, actually, so far, the title's looking like "If you don't like it, wipe it," which I quite like. That's quite a good one. Right, okay, well, we'll see you all again sometime soon. Take care, and we will see you next week. Thanks very much for watching. See you later. Bye-bye now.